Let's start off by talking about what dyadic developmental practice is. It's a series of strategies for educators to use when building relationships with trauma-affected students. It combines three areas of study: how the brain works with interpersonal neurobiology, how a child's upbringing and attachments enables them to connect to others with attachment theory, and relationship building with intersubjectivity. So when used by trusted adults, DDP helps students recognize situations and people who provide safety. As educators walk students through positive interactions and effective co-regulation, students become more able to recognize feelings of safety and situations that are safe. With safety comes greater curiosity and opportunities for learning, and students begin to build and utilize the necessary bridges for self-regulation, because as we know, a regulated brain is a brain that is ready to learn. There are some important things to recognize before beginning with dyadic developmental practice. As educators, we first have to accept that our students' behavior can change only when they feel safe, and that any perceived negative behaviors are adaptive. Children with a trauma background don't want to be dysregulated, they simply just don't know any other way to be. So the DDP process allows us to show alternative ways for students to view situations, to manage their fear, and to feel safe. So often, the usual cognitive behavioral strategies for classroom management don't work with these students. Their trauma experiences have suppressed what should be their natural application of playfulness, curiosity, and empathy. And since brain development is so greatly affected by trauma, it can be expected that these children are not going to meet our developmental expectations based on their age. It also means that our students might not be able to identify and name their emotions, and it's our job to help them do that. Acronym at the center of dyadic developmental practice is PACE. This refers to 4 elements: playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. When used intentionally by educators and trusted adults, these elements become tools for co-regulation, helping students make brain-body connections, recognize safety, reduce fear, and bring them into connection, which helps them be ready to learn. A healthy child plays naturally. In fact, it's an ancient survival instinct. So because early childhood experiences of playfulness were built through safe exploration with trusted adults, children with healthy attachments are used to this natural back and forth with their parent, sharing eye contact, sharing toys, and communicating their joy and acceptance of each other through their body language and their facial expressions, not just through their words. So trauma-affected students have not had positive early childhood experiences and do not necessarily have experience with relaxed social interactions. For a student affected by trauma, play might look different. It might look like being one who's controlling games, demanding their own way, or even it can be aggressive physical and verbal interactions. Or the opposite can happen, and a student could be so fearful of the play experience that they won't even engage with others. So it's the job of educators to understand that this inability to play is coming from a place of fear, which also makes it our job and the goal of DDP to show that playfulness is safe. Playfulness is essential for brain development, and it comes in so many different forms. It's not all Jenga and Connect 4 and playing baseball in the backfield. Play can be a funny face, laughing at a joke. It's having those shared experiences with our students, like how you greet them in the morning. Maybe you like to leave them a little drawing on a sticky note just to make them smile. With playfulness, we're teaching our students non-defensive ways to interact. We have to know, though, that there's a time and a place for playfulness, and that's really important. We shouldn't be using it to encourage a student to ignore their fear, but we can certainly use it as a way to co-regulate them in a narrative to help them understand their fear. And that's why playfulness is so important.
In the PACE acronym, A, when one hears that acceptance is a crucial part of the framework of moving children from mistrust to trust, there can be a misinterpretation of what this means, thinking it means no limits or consequences, or the expectation that one will ignore behavior in an attempt to make a child feel better. In the DDP model, there is an emphasis on both, communicating unconditional acceptance, while also stating that the behavior is unacceptable. In other words, we accept a child's anger, but not their violence or destruction. We also need to be careful with hurt children when communicating that we love them and not their behavior, as this statement is difficult for them, in that they cannot separate their behavior from themselves, or they may not have the bridges that allow for abstract and reflective functioning. It is imperative when communicating with our hurt kids to let them know that their behavior makes sense given their experience. Acceptance also means we do not evaluate or judge, either positively or negatively. It may be easier to understand why a child would feel less safe with critical comments, but positive comments can feel unsafe too. Our culture has created an idea that self-esteem is built by telling kids good job or giving medals out unearned. Kids are not stupid. They know when such gestures and comments are empty acknowledgments. When we tell them something bad is good, this is confusing. When we communicate in this way, we are actually saying that we should fear failure and that acceptance is conditional on doing a good job. It is also imperative that we accept a child's underlying experience and to believe that if a child could do better, they would. With the DDP model, the goal is to change the child's experience of safety. If we truly accept these behaviors as adaptive responses, we can also see why reward and punishment is hit and miss at best and destructive at worst. Compliance does not truly support change. True acceptance provides the safety needed to begin to change problematic behavior. When thinking of the power of unconditional acceptance, one can feel hopeful. As Dan Siegel discovered, unconditional acceptance helps to produce regrowth in our brain. It actually stimulates development that has been missed in childhood. C in the PACE acronym is for curiosity. Behavior is communication, and therefore it is crucial that we remain curious about a child's behavior and their underlying experiences. Shame, fear, and a desire for connection while also rejecting connection tends to be the top 3 emotional themes that contribute to challenging behavior. Having said this, it is also important that we never assume why our students do what they do. It is also important when our kids say, "I don't know," and they often do, that it is our job to help them figure things out. As we support children in figuring things out, we are also contributing to helping the child strengthen vital bridges within their brain. When we assist children in exploring their thoughts and feelings aloud together, we are helping them to organize and to make meaning. Our wondering with students does not mean they necessarily agree. It is simply a way of providing an alternative to "I'm a bad, no good, unlovable, crazy, throwaway kid." Wondering with them can bring in playfulness and let them know that behavior is just behavior. Lastly, curiosity communicates the intersubjective message to our students that we really do want to know them. This then leads them to seeing themselves as having value, being interesting, creative, and lovable. With curiosity, then, should we worry that we are putting words in our students' mouths? If we remember that we are in the process of wondering rather than being correct, and allowing children to disagree with our wonderings, we can then know that what we are actually doing is co-creating meaning. We are communicating that what is really important is understanding the adaptive nature of their story and moving away from their shame-based narrative. Through acceptance and curiosity, we can lead our hurt kids to new understanding of both their intentions and actions, as well as the intentions and actions of those around them.
All right, and finally, E in our PACE acronym stands for empathy. Empathy is an integral component of the PACE method. Empathy allows us to relate to other individuals, such as upset students, and approach the issue from a place of comfort and care. By using strong communication skills, we can help bridge the gap of discomfort with upset individuals. The most important part is listening and understanding to the issues presented without being judgmental. Remember, when a true state of empathy is achieved, we will be more relaxed to the issues presented and further away from our amygdala center, which wants us to go into a fight, flight, or freeze stance. Being empathetic does not require sympathy or fixing the current issue. The individual will benefit greater if you can approach the situation from an accepting and non-judgmental manner. The popular saying, "walk a mile in someone else's shoes," is a perfect example for us to relate and better understand the idea of empathy. Not until we can really put ourselves in another person's mind frame can we truly understand and appreciate the dilemmas they're going through and the emotions they're feeling. Attunement is the act of matching someone else's energy so that we may better understand and relate to how they are feeling. Think of it as when a child is angry and upset and they've started to raise their voice projection out loud. We want to try and match their energy level and raise our voices so that we may better match their output and have a better chance of them internalizing that we understand the severity of the issue. We don't want to minimize the situation, and we want to approach it from a calm and caring manner still. Before true empathy can be achieved, we must first showcase compassion for the individual and their issue. With compassion, we can get a better understanding of the root to their troubled behavior. Lastly, following the PACE method, we have consequences. When looking at consequences, it's really vitally important we understand that they can be presented in the sense of a reward or punishment. Especially when dealing with the DDP framework, consequences are most effective when the child senses an environment of trust and mutual understanding with either the counselor or teacher involved. The most important thing is we remember relationship building plays a huge role in the success of consequences. The more time and effort we put in prior to building those relationships, the more likely the consequences are to take with the students and less likely they reject it. Consequences can be effective if we remember a few pointers before administering them. First, to maximize their effectiveness, we want to make sure that the child has calmed down from the negative behavior exhibited so that they may better internalize why the consequence is happening and not reject it. It's also important as the person administering the consequence that we take time to fully understand what has happened and come up with a good plan and consequence for the child. If we rush our decision, the consequence might feel inappropriate or the child may reject it entirely. Following DDP methods allows us to use consequences to help build and develop circulatory needed in a child's development for self-regulation and co-regulation.
Talking about is a helpful way to co-regulate a child's emotions when their emotions are too intense to be able to explain to us what they're feeling or why they did something that they did. While they cool down and get back to their upstairs brain, if you have another adult in the room or even on your own, you can sort of think out loud the possible reasons behind the behavior. So if you know a little bit about the background of the student, or even if you're just sort of trying to figure out what it is that caused the behavior, you can talk about them and try to figure out, see if any of your guesses elicit any response from them. The most important part of talking about is to show the child that they're not in trouble. You are there to help them. You are there to figure out what they're feeling, why they did what they did, not to give out consequences at that moment. This is a safe space for them to open up about the reason. A possible scenario for talking about can be Johnny was throwing crayons around the classroom in the previous period. You're left in the room with Johnny and an EA. Johnny's not participating in a conversation, so you might say things like, maybe Johnny was frustrated because he didn't understand what to do. Maybe Johnny skipped breakfast this morning, and see if Johnny reacts to any of these reasons. Talking for is similar to talking about. You're going to help a child co-regulate their emotions when they're unable to express to us what they're feeling or the reason behind a behavior. You're going to sort of do a role play where you will have a conversation with the child, but you are the one saying what the student may be saying to you. The purpose here again is to make the child understand that this is a safe space and you're just trying to figure out what they're feeling, not there to give consequences at that moment. Taking Johnny's scenario with the crayons again, you might be asking, I wonder why Johnny is so upset out loud, and then answering on behalf of Johnny, giving out possible reasons. For example, well, Mrs. Phillips, I was waiting for you for so long to get to me, and you were helping all these other students, so I got frustrated and upset. I wasn't sure what to do. Of course, in a real scenario, it wouldn't be so quick and easy. You might have to list several reasons until you get some sort of a response. It is really important to remember to watch for their reaction so that you're not putting words in the student's mouth, because you might be saying something, especially on behalf of the student, that might upset them even more. So watching for that response from them is really crucial. Connect, Break, Repair talks about the importance of admitting if we did something not right and apologizing when we need to apologize, even to our students. We're all human. We all might have a bad day and we all might react in a way that we know we shouldn't have reacted. The most important thing is to admit it and tell that student, tell that child, hey, I'm sorry I reacted that way. I shouldn't have done that. And really fixing that relationship and making sure that bond is still there, showing them that even though something like that can happen, you are still a stable and safe figure in their lives. You might sometimes even go days, weeks, months without realizing that something you did affected a student in a certain way, and you started feeling sort of that the relationship is not the same. You can always ask, and it's never too late to repair that relationship. It's never too late to apologize for something you did, even if it was so long ago. And finally, the elephant in the room talks about the scenario where you might feel that something is wrong in your relationship with a student, with anybody in your life really, but you don't sort of approach it even though you feel something is off. It talks about the importance of it's better to ask and be curious if you're not sure if something is wrong, because they might actually open up and tell you, and you can repair that relationship there rather than letting more and more time pass, drifting apart, maybe damaging that relationship even more. It's never too late to ask, and it's always better to be sure and repair that bond.
Hi everyone, my name is Amy Sharon and I'll be presenting 4 different approaches. So the affective reflective dialogue. This is a dialogue that's meant to create a sense of safety through conversation about an event or experience that the student has just had. You want to identify the emotional meaning of the event or experience. During this dialogue, the adult should identify what the child is feeling, use pace to help the child stay regulated, use patience, and communicate that the relationship between you will not be damaged by this event. The storytelling prosody. This is the use of a storytelling voice, so using intonation and enthusiasm, and also using a higher frequency voice rather than lower frequency, because higher frequency voice will be perceived as safer and will be less likely to lead the child to anxiety. And you're going to choose a relevant story to bring your personal life in to make the child feel understood and not alone in their experiences. Follow, lead, follow dialogue. This is one in which you want to let the child lead first. Let them guide the first topic of conversation, whichever that might be. Then you want to shift from their topic to a difficult conversation that needs to be had, like you need to return to your work now, or you need to join the class. So this is where you want to use that storytelling prosody again, and you want to show that you understand. After this, you're going to go back to following the child and letting them lead. So this will also hopefully involve coming to a solution and returning to work, and also helping them to co-regulate. Finally, use of touch. So this is one that we want to be careful with, especially as staff in a school. So we can use of touch to help teach that there is a difference between harmless touch and unsafe touch. But the use of touch that you are using must be safe and be in the presence of 3 to 4 other staff members is what is recommended. And before using touch, you want to consider the child's developmental stage, background, personality, and sensory needs.